إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد. We're talking about the four fundamental principles, where he starts off with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اعلم رحمك الله أنه يجب علينا تعلم 4 مسائل. الأولى العلم، وهو معرفة الله ومعرفة نبيه ومعرفة دين الإسلام بالأدلة. الثانية العمل به. الثالثة الدعوة إليه. الرابعة الصبر على الأذى فيه. والدليل قوله تعالى بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. قال الشافعي رحمه الله تعالى لو ما أنزل الله حجة على خلقه إلا هذه السورة لكفتهم. We're on the 4 fundamental principles of this book, of this booklet. We mentioned in previous classes that even though the core part of this book is Tawheed, the topic, the subject matter of this book is Tawheed. If you're going to put it in a section in your library, you have different sections, fiqh, usul, Tawheed, seerah. You put it in the Tawheed section. But Islamic knowledges are intertwined. In the past 11 classes, we took matters of usul, took matters of hadith. Now this class is going to seem more like a tafsir class. In the future, the class will get deeper into Tawheed, where we're going to talk about the core, like wala and bara, as he made statements about that. So basically, the knowledges, the sciences of Islam are intertwined. Today we're going over a surah of Surat al Asr. And we're going over it not in such depth. And why? Why so? Because the past 11 classes were nothing but tafsir Surat al Asr. The 4 introductory fundamental principles we've been talking about all this time were directly taken from Surat al Asr. They are directly taken out of Surat al Asr. So let's talk about this great surah. And let's start with the introduction. And really, as an introduction to the surah, you don't need to know more than a hadith where كان الرجلان من أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا التقيا لم يفترقا حتى يقرأ أحدهما على الآخر والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر ثم يسلم أحدهما على الآخر. This hadith is in al-Tabarani, and its chain of authenticity is authentic. When the Sahaba used to meet, when they used to see each other, they would only depart after one of them would recite Surat al Asr. And then they would bid each other peace and leave. This shows you the subject matter of their discussions. We need to be careful in what we discuss. Their discussions, look at that, and compare our discussions to theirs. Their dreams, their hopes, their thoughts, if you look at it and analyze in the hadith, was all Islam. Knowledge is not an accumulation of text, but application of the text you learn. You see the effect of their knowledge in their settings. They're not double-faced. One face in the masjid and a totally different person in their private settings or behind walls or closed doors and in their homes. If you were to do a survey today on the talabat al-ilm and on businessmen and people, engineers and professionals, blue collar, white collar, laymen, knowledgeable, and ask, what topics dominate their private settings? Politics, plain old politic talks, business, stocks, sports. That's if it doesn't go into matters that are further, that are further and clear in their prohibition, in their haram. Why did the Sahaba read Surah al Asr? Why in their private settings were they recited Surah al Asr? When they were taught plenty of ayat and plenty of ahadith. I always think of this situation when I talk about it, or read it. Out of 114 surahs in the Quran, why did the Sahaabah choose Surah al Asr? I say to myself, if it was for the blessings, the Faatihah would be better of a choice, because it's the mother of the Quran. Or rather, go to al-Ikhlaas, which is 1/3 of the Quran. But why did they choose al Asr? 3 verses, 14 words, and 70 letters. Possibly one of the shortest surahs in the Quran. Actually, the shortest 4 surahs in the Quran are al-Ikhlaas, al-Kawthar, al-Nasr, and al-Asr. In fact, the shortest surah in the Quran is al-Kawthar. The one right after that, in being short, is the surah we have today, Surah al Asr. The surah gives you the 4 fundamental principles of your belief. Your salvation is in the surah. The way to success in this life and success in the hereafter is in the surah. They chose this of other surahs because it gives the path you're on, the true meaning of friendship and how your relationship with others is. Tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bil sabr. Allah gives an oath by al-Asr, by time. Allah gives an oath by that which He wills, on whatever He wills. This gives honor and high regard to what Allah gives an oath by, and on the subject matter that the oath is given to. It gives honor, it gives importance to that which Allah gave an oath by, and that which Allah gave an oath on. We all know Allah's words are all held in high regard, all of it. So imagine how high of a regard they must be when He gives an oath by them. That's why when a Bedouin, in the Bedouins, a lot of them knew the Arabic language. He heard the oath of Allah. فَوَرَبِّ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ إِنَّهُ لَحَقٌّ مِثْلَ مَا أَنَّكُمْ تَنْطِقُونَ. In Surah Al-Dhariyat, Allah says, by the Lord of the heaven and the earth, it is truth, it is the truth, just as it is the truth that you can speak. The Bedouin began to shake. He said, who got Allah so mad that He needed to give such an oath? He took it to heart that Allah gave an oath. What does al-Asr mean? It means time. There are many opinions, but I think from my perspective or from my experience in teaching, it's best to summarize them in 4 opinions. And they're all correct. We'll boil them down to 4 opinions. And as you know, the Quranic wording is broad at times. And that's why you have many opinions on certain words or verses. The first meaning of al-Asr is al-Dahr wa zaman, the epic, the era, time. That's what's meant by it. In what era? They said two opinions. From the time of the creation until the judgment day, or from the time you were born. Another group said from the time you were born until the time you die. That is to show one is like a spinning wheel. Every time passes by, every moment, every second that passes by, a portion of you is lost. You are made of time. Imagine yourself as if you were made of time, of seconds. Every time a second passes by, a slice of you is cut off. A slice of you is buried. Ibn Abbas said, Asr means dahr, the token of time, an era, age, time, the time period. Wa in wal asr, the wow here is harf qasam. That letter is a letter of an oath. The time from the start of the earth until the final moments. The time from when one is born until he dies. Why is al-Asr so important? Why? He gave an oath by something, it means it's important. Because the tests of mankind that will determine your ultimate, final destiny occur during al-Asr, during time. They all occur during time. And also, because the miracles of Allah occur in al-Asr. Among the miracles of Allah are those that occur during al-Asr. Who is the one who makes night as a covering for you, and sleep as a repose for you. He makes the day nushur, getting up, energetic, to go for your daily work and tasks. He made sleep as a sign for you, as a miracle for you. He made night as a sign and a miracle. He created the night, He created the day, the sun, the moon, all of them in an orbit flowing. All of that occurs, a portion of Allah's miracles and sign occur in al-Asr. When do those signs occur? In al-Asr. So it's because you're the determining factor of your ultimate, your final future. It happens in al-Asr, and many of Allah's miracles and signs occur during al-Asr. Time is so essential that it could be the final seconds of one's life that turn out to be the determining factor in one's ultimate destiny. He says shahada that will take him from being permanently doomed to those who were swayed from hellfire onto a heaven bigger than the sky and the earth. If a few minutes or a few seconds can take one from the status of being doomed to a high status of being in a garden of heaven bigger than the sky and the earth, then imagine the value of time during your entire lifetime. You see how important time is? You see how important al-Asr is? That's why Allah gives an oath by it. That's the first opinion. Second opinion is that al-Asr means the era, the time, the era of the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the ideal era. It's the most important era. It's the era where we consider it the golden era, because we refer to it in everything. Our ummah will never achieve success nor honor ever until they refer back to that golden era in everything. The Asr al-Dhahabi, al-Asr al-Dhahabi. For political matters, we refer to that era. If it's worship, we refer to that era. If it's to attain any type of guidance, it's in that era. Aqidah, manners, it's the era we look up to. The golden era, the best era. That's the second opinion. The third opinion is that Asr means the time at the end of the day. Qatada said in one of his opinions, in one of Qatada's opinions, because he had many opinions on this issue, in one of his opinions he said that it's the last moments of daylight, meaning right before sun goes down. When people call it day, that's usually the time that people call it day. They return from home, from work, they get back home from business, they return back home from school, from farming, they close shop. Then they begin to ponder and contemplate and calculate the gains and losses for that day, the achievements or failures for that day. They begin to think about it. Allah wants you to draw attention to the end of the day when you usually return from materialistic life and you're usually worldly minded at that time. He wants you also to be akhirah minded and think about what you achieved or lost in matters pertaining to the akhirah. Akhirah is a business transaction. It's a trade. Allah called it a trade. Just as you check your profits and loss, your achievements and losses at the end of the day, your achievements and failures, you do the same for al-akhirah. إن الذين يتلون كتاب الله وأقاموا الصلاة وأنفقوا مما رزقناهم سرا وعلانية يرجون تجارة لن تبور. Those who perform salah and spend in charity out of that which Allah provided them secretly and openly, they hope for a sure trade gain that will never perish. Tijara, business transaction that will never perish. Allah called the matter of the life after a trade, a business that will never perish, unlike the businesses of this life. At a time when you're worldly minded, at the end of the day, by al-Asr, be akhirah minded as well. Allah wants you to take advantage of your time. One of my shuyukh told me that his shuyukh told him, or he heard it already, I don't remember what it was, but it stuck in his mind, and when he said it, it stuck in my mind. He said people, the scholars, knew the true value of al-Asr, time or era, and what it meant by looking at a wagon or cart sellers who sell ice. when I made Hajj, the last time I made Hajj was in the mid-90s. And you would see back then, many people during Hajj in Mina and Arafat and Muzdalifah, they would push a cart wagon in the very hot sun selling ice. And if there would be big ice cubes, ice blocks. If you don't take advantage of every second and sell the ice, what happens to it? It melts. If they slack off, if they park that wagon and cart and go relax in the tent in Mina with one of their friends and go idle, the ice melts. Their capital investment and their profits are all gone. Once the ice melts and turns into useless drops on the ground, all one can do at that point is clap his hands in sorrow and grief and regret. There's no point in doing anything because he's lost it all. That ice is your time. That's your asr. If you don't use it wisely, before you know it, it'll be useless drops in the alleys and pathways. The Qur'an is so amazing when you look at it. When Allah gives an oath by time, if you look at it, when He gives an oath by time, by the early time of the day, when there's activity, when there's daylight, وَالضُّحَى, in the early day, when you're heading to work, when you're heading to school, when you're heading to business, when your deeds start, when your activities start, it's the duha, it's the early part of the day. In that surah, Allah says, a promise. وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى. The verses go on to say, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. He gave an oath by daylight. Soon after that, He said, I'll give you. Promise. There's a promise in there. That's in the early daytime when He gives an oath by the early day. But then if you look at al-Asr, according to this opinion, al-Asr is the end of the day, right at sundown, when everyone returns from work, when the day's over. Because the next day starts at Maghrib. The night at Maghrib is the beginning of the next day. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Al-Asr, He says, لَفِي خُسْرٍ, a loss. Why does He mention loss here? Because it's the end of the day. If you didn't take advantage of it, your ice melted. The oath by the daytime in Surah al-Duha is followed by a promise, because that's the start of the day, to encourage you, to inspire you to do good. وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ. Al-Asr, the end of the day, according to the third opinion, and that means it's at a loss if you did not take advantage of that day. The fourth opinion. The fourth opinion is that al-Asr here means precisely Salat al-Asr. In another group that we can tag on, another opinion we tag on here, is it's the timing of Salat al-Asr. Not Salat al-Asr, the timing of Salat al-Asr. Why Salat al-Asr according to this opinion? That's to show honor and importance to the Salah. In al-Bukhari, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man fatathu salatul asri فكأنما وتر أهله وماله." Ibn Umar said that the Prophet ﷺ said, whomever misses the Asr prayer, then it is as if he lost his family and his property. In Bukhari, "Man fatathu salatul asr فقد حبط عمله." The Prophet ﷺ says, whomever misses Salat al-Asr, whomever misses Salat al-Asr, his deeds will be annulled. Look at these hadith are misses the timing of it. Not leaves it, not neglects it where he doesn't make his salah. This is one who misses the timing of it. Close your eyes and imagine a day when you have it all. Everything's going good for you. You're content in life. Your job is beautiful. Your school is great. Your family and your relationship with them is at its peak. And all of a sudden, you wake up one day or you walk to your house and everything is gone. Your wealth is gone. Your family is gone. May Allah protect your families. Your job is gone. How would you feel? You should feel that's the Prophet ﷺ saying, that's even worse if one misses the time in the Salat al-Asr. The selected opinion on al-Asr, and keep in mind the words of Allah are miraculous. The meanings of the Qur'an at many times can encompass many meanings. At-Tabari rahimahullah said, the correct view on this is that Allah gave an oath by al-Asr. which means the token of time. Era, it's day, it's night, it's evening, it's all of time. Basically saying, it's all of the above. It's all of time. Allah didn't specify a certain time or era, so everything that falls under Asr, time, is included in this verse. Shanqiti rahmahullah, and Shanqiti, this is the older Shanqiti, the author of Adwa al-Bayan, because there's many Shanqitis out there and many ulama of them. He was my father's teacher, a man that I was a kid when my father was in Medina at that time, and he was a man I wish I laid my eyes on, a giant in ilm. There's hundreds of ulama that are attributed to Shanqiti, but if you say Ash-Shanqiti, among the learned people of knowledge today, it refers to this man, Ash-Shanqiti. Just like you say Al-Kitab means book, but if you say Al-Kitab, it automatically to us Muslims it means Al-Qur'an. And like when you say Ash-Shanqiti, it means this Shanqiti, among the learned, knowledgeable people. My father used to have recorded the tafsir of him that were approximately 50 years old, that he kept close to him under his bed until they were confiscated approximately 12 years ago by the FBI, where I remember I used to listen to some of them where they were tafsir of Surah al-Tawbah. Among these giants, students are Ibn Baz, Ibn Uthaymeen, Abdurrahman al-Barraq is a student, Ahmad al-Uqla is one of his students. Bakr Abu Zayd is one of his students. Atiyya Salam, rahmatullah alayhim ajma'in, is one of his students. Actually, Atiyya Salam is, I believe, his number one student, because he never departed his side. He found him, he met him, never left him till his last moments. And he was my teacher and my father's teacher, Atiyya Salam. Shanqiti wrote 3 tafsirs of the Qur'an. The final one, and the most thorough one, was an amazing tafsir where he did tafsir of the Qur'an by the Qur'an. He wrote it in 7 volumes. And when he got to Surah al-Mujadala, verse number 22, rahmatullah alayhi, died. His student, Atiyya Salam, who was my father's teacher and my teacher, someone I was very close to, he finished the Quran. He finished the tafsir. And then they sent it out to print it, and it's now called Adwa al-Bayan. My father informed me one time that they asked the Shanqiti, rahmatullah alayhi, why is it you put so much emphasis on tafsir? He gave a great portion of his life to tafsir, even though he was a great knowledgeable person in usul. He was very knowledgeable in fiqh. He was very knowledgeable in aqeedah, and he has booklets on that. He was a master in many of the Islamic sciences, even in Arabic language and grammar. And the answer was, he said, not a single opinion of the opinions of Salaf on any verse in the Quran except I know. He's not bolstering, he's confined in his students. Ulama, brilliant ulama. My father told me he heard that. And of course I love my father and I believe him. May Allah grant him a long life full of deeds. When I returned to Medina alone to study in the Islamic University, I was in the company of Shaykh Atiyya Salam. And one of the times I asked him, I said, did you hear what my father told me? Did you hear it? Shaykh Atiyya said, I remember the day your father asked it, and the setting we were in, and the surrounding of that day. Giants, not an opinion of the Salaf on any matter except he knows it. Now we have little kids and rascals running around portraying themselves to be imams of mufassirin, selling the verses of Allah and the hadith for a little price to please the enemies of Allah and the enemies of mankind. A brother came to me a few days ago, and he said, he was truthful, and I gotta respect his truthfulness. He said, will you write me a tazkiyah so I can get in a certain place to learn? I asked him some questions because I didn't know him. And I asked, what was your purpose to learn? Why you want to go learn? He was very frank and honest. He said he wants to learn basically to bank off of it. He said he knows so-and-so who just knows Arabic. He has an institute and he charges on each head per year so-and-so. And if you want to learn tafsir from him, you got to learn. Names he named, I don't even know. You've got to learn tafsir from him, you got to pay to learn. And he wants to do the same. He wants to bank off of it. Today, we have unhatched, inferior mufassirin who, when calamity befalls their brothers, the manabir begin to shake in unity with their shouts, one cheering the other, tampering in the verses of Allah, quoting hadith and manipulating their meanings in the meanings of ayat. Then when a historic genocide of 2,500 to 3,000 of our honored, beloved brothers in Bangladesh, suddenly the pulpits are silenced. They're the hermaphrodites. I said it before, and I say it again. These are the hermaphrodites. These are the hermaphrodites of the ummah, because if you know the definition of a hermaphrodite, he's the one with a reproductive organ of both sexes. And also, it's one who possesses disparate and contradictory qualities in the way they think or they talk or speak. One way of thinking when there's lots of Muslim lives, and one way of thinking when there's lots of non-Muslim lives. The fault really is not on those malignant tumors, as much as it is on those drifters and floaters who follow behind them, the ignorant masses. You find someone who has no idea about jewelry, but he won't trust his necklace or his wife's necklace or his ring at a jeweler for half an hour to fix it until he makes sure this is a trustworthy, honest jeweler who knows what he's doing. For 5 minutes, he can't trust someone with a necklace. And the same thing with a doctor. He'll go and choose the best doctor and seek and pursue it. But when it comes to his deen, he'll take it from the hermaphrodites. And instead of this taking our topic, let's get back to our point. Shaykh Shanqiti, a giant in tafsir, commenting on this verse, he said the opinion of al-Asr, he took the opinion of al-Tabari rahimahullah of al-Asr, which means it's the entire time, from the beginning till the end, or your time on earth, which in reality becomes time. He means all of time. Basically, your time on this earth altogether as an individual, or all of the time of creation. And why I mention his opinion is not because it's opinion, because it's the same as al-Tabari, nearly the same as al-Tabari, very close to al-Tabari. Why I mention it is because how unique he selected this opinion and how he supported it. Before al-Asr, he said, look how he supported it. He said, before al-Asr, there's al-Takathur, Surah al-Takathur. In Surah al-Takathur, al-Hakum al-Takathur, Allah is vilifying one who's occupied with this world until he visits the grave. He doesn't take advantage of this life until he visits the grave. Al-Hakum al-Takathur hatta zurtum al-maqabir kalla sawfa ta'lamun. Then after al-Asr, before is al-Takathur, after al-Asr is al-Humazah. Allah is saying the same. Gathering wealth will not make you last forever. Take a lesson and take advantage of your time so you can succeed in the life after. وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ الَّذِي جَمَعَ مَالًا وَحَدَّدَ. The conclusion is, since the surah before Al-Asr is in reality telling one to make good use of his time on this earth, and the one after is doing the same, it best suits that the surah in between, which is Al-Asr, have the same theme and meaning, which is your time on this earth, take it and take advantage of it. So he said, we stick to the theme of the surah before and the surah after.